Well,
Let it be above ground, right?
I spoke to a pilot once, and you and I have flown millions of miles. I spoke to a pilot once, and I said, "How was the flight?" And he said, "Any flight's a good flight if you can walk away from it."
There you go.
I thought that was a great answer. And then the other answer, of course, has to do with is it's as long as the grass is above you and not below you, or something like that. But
Oh, it should be the other way around. As long as the class is below you.
I just came running in because I wanted so much to spend some time with you, and I just came running in. And here in San Diego, where I am, we have virtually no traffic. I mean, the freeways are empty, so that I couldn't use the excuse I got stuck in traffic. It's one of the things I tell people. I say, when you're in business, I was just doing a sales conference, and they were asking what is the key to success, and I'm training this group in the East, and I said, with regard to closing the sale, never show up late. He said, this is the meeting where you're going to ask for the order, always show up late, always be fully prepared. As don't ever say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was late, I got stuck in traffic," because what that says is that I'm a jerk, and if you buy anything from me, you're only going to be disappointed and wish that you hadn't. And there's a rule, and I've spoken for personnel organizations, and one of the rules that they have, Personnel Training 101, is never hire a person who shows up late for an appointment, for an interview. Yeah. Never hire a person who shows up late for an interview. And I noticed that about you, and about the best people is they're always on time. Only about 4% of the population, according to surveys, are punctual. And those people stand out. People know them. People think about them. People refer to them. They just know that if so-and-so says that they're going to be here at 10 o'clock, at 5 minutes to 10, they walk in the door fully prepared. Anyway, so we want to talk about success. One of the most important things about success is be on time and be fully prepared.
All right, so let us get us started here, Brian. First of all, everybody, we are so honored to have with us as our guest today on Successful People, one of the most successful people who you will ever meet. And there are a lot of Zoom calls going on around the world, but there are very few who've written 80 books, who have spoken to 5 million people around the world, who have spoken to 1,000 different countries. His books have been translated into dozens of languages around the world.
Actually, it's 100. I've spoken in 84 countries because there aren't 1,000 countries.
Well, I said 1,000 companies in 84 countries. There we go. There we go.
Thank you.
500 different audio programs he's done. Every time I introduce him, it was like 2 years ago, we were in Russia speaking at the, I can't remember the name of the program now.
Yeah, it's the Money
Money Forum.
Money Forum, yes. It's a great one.
And at that time, it was like 50 or 60 books that he published. When I look on his website now, it says like 80 books. Brian, are you aiming for 100 books, or what's the goal here?
Well, actually, it's probably more than that, because I've co-written about 20 books with groups of authors through publishers who will have me write a key chapter because I'm so well known, and then they will sell a chapter to 20 to 30 people. And that's a very good way for a person to publish a book, because on the cover of their book, there will be them with me, and with a great statement about how you, the person who's co-written the book, are one of the authorities in the field, and you can send the book out. I was just talking to someone yesterday, a really important conversation, and it was he was asking me about what influence does writing a book have in your life. And when I was a nobody from nowhere, knocking on doors selling, I read an article in Training Magazine, and it said there are two parts of your life. There's BB and AB. BB is before book, and AB, AB is after book. is something about your life changes when you write a book. And, and as you know, you become a different person when you write a book. It has, you know, as Jim Rohn says, becoming a millionaire is not important. It's the person you have to become a millionaire that is important, even a billionaire. Because if you achieve a large amount of money or a large amount of success, you become a different person, and you can do it all over again. You can have all kinds of recessions and depressions and collapses and pandemic viruses and so on. But when the dust settles, you get up and you know how to do it. So therefore, doing it is so important. You know that the number is 65 to 66% of adults dream of writing a book. They say in New York, they say they feel they've got a book in them.
Yeah.
They got a book in them. And they're always talking. They talk to you. I've got a book in me. I want to write this book. I want to write this book. And only 1 or 2% will ever do it. They'll always have an excuse. Or I remember that people talk about writing a script, and they talk about this in Los Angeles. People go to Los Angeles, and what they want to do is they want to write a script, and they want to become rich and famous. And that happens. Many of the movies that you see were some nobody from nowhere who moved to Los Angeles, and they worked at Joe Jobs, and they worked and worked, and they wrote a script, and then they worked and worked and worked to get this script into the hands of somebody. Anyway, they were joking about procrastination, and they sent one of the reporters out onto Wilshire Boulevard on the sidewalk in the front of the Los Angeles Times. And what he did is he stood there, and as people came along, mostly males, he'd ask a question. He said, "How's your script going?" And 90% of people said, "Almost done." Isn't it? And I heard that years ago, and I realized, do you know how many people have this idea of succeeding in something, starting your own business? How's your business plan going? Almost done. How's your script going? How is your outline for your book going? Almost done. Which means not yet started.
Hey, Brian, you're sitting in this office in your home. I've been in your home. We used to live across the street from each other, everybody. Our children raised together. So we've known each other for many, many years. Actually, both of us are born in Canada. You were born in Prince Edward Island, is that right?
That's correct.
And I was born in Alberta, and then I emigrated. My mother was American when my dad took her north to Canada, and then so I immigrated back down here where a lot of my family's at. Brian is sitting in his office. Now, Brian is one of the most efficient, he's a machine, is what he is. How he gets done so much. Now, you're seeing his office right here where these 100 books were written, Brian. Plus, where else do you write your books besides in that office right there? Yeah. Where on the plains?
I have gone on vacations writing. By the way, if there's anybody here who has a fantasy or an idea about writing a book, I had an interesting experience when I wrote my first book. It came out, and the publisher did a terrible job of promoting the book. You and I have talked about this love-hate relationships we have with our publishers. And I went down to New York, and I sat down with them, and I was really a little bit angry. And I said, "How come you're not helping this? This is a great book. I mean, this should be a bestseller, and you're not doing any promotion." They said, "Well, you don't understand. We will publish the book, and we will market it through the marketing channels, but you're going to have to promote the book yourself." And then I learned from another friend of mine who had 44 books, a wonderful woman, and that she just kept writing book after book, never expecting that a book is going to make them rich. But if you keep on, you'll strike lightning. You'll find gold. And so she said in a speech that she gave, and I never forgot it, she said, if you want to be successful, first of all, you have to write a good book. And second of all, you have to be prepared to invest $100,000 in promoting your book. And now this is some time ago, and many of the rules have changed. But anyway, so I went to the publisher, and they say, well, if you want to promote your book, it's out there. then you have to hire a publicist. And I said, where do you get a publicist? I said, well, we'll get you a publicist. And they gave me one of the worst publicists in the history of the world. She had never promoted a book before. She promoted breakfast cereals for breakfast cereal companies and gardening tools. And they said, here, we'll give you a name, because she had obviously bought.
Brian, unmute yourself, will you? Brian, will you unmute yourself? We had some noise. There we go. We had some noise in the background and we had to, I had to unmute you. I had to mute you up. So come back again. There you go.
Okay.
So you're back. We can see you now.
Okay. Well, here's what happened. And it's a real, an amazing thing. That anyway, so I said, okay, I asked around and somebody said, well, the best publicist that you can get is this amazing woman named Ariel Ford. And I only say that because you probably know her.
I know.
Do you know her?
Yeah. I think she's still with us.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think
it's been years since I saw her. So I hired her and she was like a rotary lawnmower. You started up and basically she was just a machine. She was getting me interviews. And at that time, interviews are what got a book going. You got on radio or television or newspaper or magazines or anything. And she got me interviews and the books, and the phone started to ring and the book started to sell. And it was wonderful. And then it stopped, like hitting a wall. And so I said, what happens? She said, well, your 3 months are up. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, the way that it works in the book business is that they will, the individuals and companies that promote books, they'll promote a book for the 3 months before the book is released, saying the book is coming and here's what it's about and here's the author and here's how we'll help you, and put in your pre-order. You'll notice if you go on to, if you're on Amazon, they're always saying you can pre-order, or your friends will write you a book and say, please put in a pre-order. And I do that for my friends. I've done it for you and you've done it for me and so on. So you put in a pre-order on Amazon. And then when the book comes out, they'll continue to interview you for 3 months more. And then your window closes. And that's all she wrote. So I said, well, what can I do? They said, it was kind of like a dumb answer, but she said, write another book. And I said, what? And I had written a really good book on success. I think it's many people all over the world say it's the very best book on personal success ever written. It's called Maximum Achievement. And
how many of you have read Maximum Achievement? Let's just see if there's anybody has a copy of it. Maximum Achievement. We have a few of you have it. This is a fantastic book. It's just, and it was written in like 88 or 90 or something like that.
Yeah, 89, 90.
89. And when I read that book, is so much detail on success. So Brian, you're amazing. It's true. And
it's been published all over the world. More people have become millionaires, multimillionaires, like 100, 200, 300. And I have 3 billionaires who have come to me, hired me, spoke to me and said, this book took them from rags to riches, rags to riches. They took them into, one of them was worth $8.9 billion today. And it was because of the book. He was pushing a gurney in a hospital in St. Petersburg after the USSR had collapsed, and he was pushing a gurney for $200 a month. Today, he's one of the richest men in the world. And he hired me just to talk to me and share his story for a whole day. It was the most amazing, a very nice man, not pretentious. His story was unbelievable, unbelievable. And other stories as well. And why? Because of Maximum Achievement. And then, anyway, so this was the book. And I said, okay, I'd written a really good audio program for Nightingale Conant called The Psychology of Selling, which became the best-selling program on sales in the history of the world. And again, they said more salespeople became millionaires listening to Psychology of Achievement. I just spoke to someone recently who was literally in rags, living on the floor, going nowhere in his mid-20s. And he read Psychology of Achievement. We listened to Psychology of Achievement, and he listened to it 100 times. And today he's a multi-millionaire, lives in a big house on the hill, has his kids in private schools. He said, I attribute everything to the Psychology of Achievement, the audio program. So, and I had written another one on time management, and I kept writing or recording audio programs for Nightingale Conant. And so she said, we should write another book. And I thought, well, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll take all the notes from Psychology of Achievement and I'll write it into a book. And they called it Advanced Selling Strategies. And so I did. And then we did it. We promoted 3 months in advance, 3 months afterwards. And then the book sold reasonably well. And my 3 months were up. So I made a decision. I was going to write a book every 3 months. And I did that for 26 years. And plus, I did a couple of extra books. I'd come up with an idea. And I said, that would be a good book. And
how do you do that? You're sitting right there. You made the decision you're going to do that, but it means every day you got to be writing.
That's the key. You make a decision and you follow through on your decision. The most important thing in success, basically start and end this program with that. Make a decision that it's unbreakable, and then you fulfill your decision. But anyway, so what I did is I made a decision to do it, and I began to work at it. And I went to a bookstore near us. You may recall that really great bookstore in the shopping center, not far from where we live. Beautiful, kind of an arty bookstore out there. And I went down there. This whole section for authors, and I know how to write a book and how authors write and how authors think. And I began to buy the books one at a time and read them from cover to cover. I have a way of reading. I read it from cover to cover and I underline. I never go anywhere without 2 pens, a blue and a red. My kids sometimes say, Dad, have you got something to write with? And I go like drawing a gun, like a gunfighter. Boom, boom, red and white. And they laugh. My kids always carry pens. And I would write it, and then I would read it again, and I would rewrite it with a different color. And sometimes a book like your books, by the way, your books will have 3 or 4 colors. I'll start off with blue, and then I'll go to red, and then I go to green, then I go to black. And when I go back through, and then I underline and I circle, when I go back through, if it's as good as your books are, I then have a special spiral notebook, and I'll take and I'll write out my favorite lines from your books. I'll write them out so that what I have is a condensation of all of your best thoughts. And then I can reread the whole book in about 30 to 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And so that's how I learn. Because I'm not, when people say you're so smart, you have all this information. No, I just read and I write and I underline and so on. And so I wrote a book every 3 months. And people kept telling me, how do you write a book? How do you write a book? I said, well, you just do this. And this is step number 1. You decide the subject. And step number 2 is you outline the main headings, like the chapters. And step number 3, I said, look, I'll tell you what, I'll write it out for you. And so I went down home and wrote it out, and I typed it up, and I gave them the list. And everybody else said, can I have that too? Can I have that list? I said, I'll put it on my website. By this time now, we had websites. We didn't have websites before. Yeah. And so I put it, and you go to my website, which is briantracy.com. And on briantracy.com, it says book writing formula or how to write a book, 20 points. And there's no charge. You just download it, bing, and it's 20 points. So if I want to write a book, I will go back to that list. I really don't have to anymore because I've written 86 books. So what I do is I will just sit down and I'll just start to write the points, the title, the main chapters, how do you write, and it's beautiful. And so my guys at Branditize, and this is where you want to go for the free stuff. I have some really wonderful free information which we send to you at no charge because we want you to be so convinced that our stuff is good, is that somewhere down the line you may actually buy something. I mean, that's the way the world works. Something free, and then something that costs not very much. And then we guarantee it unconditionally for a year. So therefore, if you buy anything from us that will help you educationally, and you have a year to use it. I did this with my audio programs at my seminars too, by the way. I stumbled across it one day. I studied how do you sell products from the stage, from being in front of an audience. And I found that you offer a guarantee. And so the Direct Mails Association of America did a study on guarantees. And what they found was the shorter the guarantee, the higher the return rate, or the lower the purchase rate in the first place. So if you offer a 7-day guarantee, of 100 people in the audience who can buy from you, you offer a 7-day guarantee, maybe 1 will buy. You offer a 1-month guarantee, 3 will buy, or 4 will buy. You offer a 2-month guarantee, 5 or 10 will buy. So I found that the longer your guarantee, the lower the return rate. And I said, oh my God. So now what I do is I say, here, I'll give you, try a 1-year guarantee. A 1-year guarantee, anybody that will ever buy the product will buy it with a 1-year guarantee. I started to sell more programs from the stage than anybody else in the world. They said, basically, a friend of mine, the president of the National Speakers Association said, Brian sells more product than God. And I never forgot that. It was Patricia Fripp when she was the president.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, she's a wonderful person. She said he sells more product than God. And they didn't realize, first of all, you have to make a good presentation, but then you just guarantee it so sweepingly. And so what we do now is we say, if you buy anything from us, we give almost like a Nordstrom guarantee. You know, Nordstrom is one of the most successful department stores in the world. And Walmart is the same, by the way. You buy anything from these companies and they'll give you a refund for the rest of your life. And they'll even give you a refund to your ancestors if they inherit it. But people, there's famous stories about that. So what I did, I give a guarantee. So I put together a program called How to Write a Book and Get Published. And I say, here's everything you need to do. It's all written out, every point. And then I give a program online. I teach how to write a book and get published. And I tell them everything that I learned in writing a book and getting published. And so you just sign up, you get the program. And if you do write the book, then you write to me and tell me about your book. I have a little bit of a form that you fill out, and I'll write you a testimonial. Now, one of the things that you need to know is that when you write a book, the most important person in the world is the literary agent. The publishers themselves will not talk to you. They will not take your calls. If you send them a book manuscript.
You need a testimonial like the one you wrote there for me, Brian, right there on the back.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, because everything you write is consistent with my teaching. It's got to be practical. It's got to be easy. It's got to be workable. You should be able to learn it, do it, and get results in one smooth motion. And that's why your stuff. I tell you, I first read your book about No Money Down, and I've been in real estate. I've done $500 million in real estate sales and development all over the world. Hey, nothing down. I read that book, and based on my experience, which was copious, because I read that book and said, this is good stuff. This is honest. It's true. If you do these things, you get these results. And the things that you suggested to do, many of them I had never thought of, but I knew from my experience it was all true. And so I bought and read every book you ever wrote. And then when I found—
I have not read all of your books, Brian. I'm sorry.
That's
all 88 of them or whatever.
Well, I'll tell you.
Which one should I read? Which one, if you could take all of the 88 books you've read, you've written, and if there was just 3 that everybody on this call had to buy, which would be the 3? Maximum Achievement, I think, is number 1.
Yes.
Eat That Frog?
Yes. Eat That Frog is the best-selling book on time management in the history of the world. It sold millions and millions of copies, and it continues to sell millions of copies. And people literally transform. I get so many letters and phone calls. People read the book. They buy 1,000 copies for their Fortune 500 executives, and then everybody sits down. They create seminars, and they come back to me and they say, we've taken your book and turned it over to our HR department and created a seminar. But then we realized, can we do this legally? I mean, taking your stuff. And you know, another thing I do, people ask me, can I use this material? I say, 100%, whatever you ask, it's yours. Everything that is said or written, or no, not written, is said or spoken is in the public domain. And if you find something in my book, you have absolutely unlimited permission to use it in any way possible to help yourself or anybody else. Because the rule, and we're talking esoterically here, the rule is this, and it's my favorite, one of my favorite spiritual rules, is that the more you give away at no charge, with no expectation of return, the more that will come back to you from the most unexpected sources. I studied the work of many spiritual teachers, and one of them said this. They said, in law, we have the law of sowing and reaping. And that means that the more that you sow, the more you reap, the more you plant, the more comes back to you. But you can't control the giving back. The giving back takes place as a result of God and the universe and everything else. The only part of the equation of success that you can control is the putting in. It's the giving. It's the thinking of ways to give. So many people who didn't have very much money just went to work for charities. They went to work and they donated their time, and they donated their money, and they donated whatever they have. They just gave it away, just gave it away. You know, you and I told you a long time ago, before you ask, the answer is yes. You ask, if you want a testimonial, if you want me to come and talk to your friends here, the answer is yes. It's because, anyway, so what happened with...
You know, he was at the hospital today, getting a CAT scan today, right, Brian?
Yeah, for heart surgery on Monday.
Heart surgery on Monday, so guess where Brian is? He's a giver, you know? So, sorry, I cut you off there.
Anyway, so I threw in this little give, and the give was that if you actually follow the instructions in my program, and you write the book, and you get your agent, and by the way, I was starting to say this, the most important person in your life is a literary agent. And where do you find literary agents? Well, if you've got a computer, just go onto the computer and look up literary agents. And I have books. I have 5 or 6 books, which are almost like catalogs of the literary agents that specialize in different subjects. So therefore, if you want to write a book on a subject, you get the literary list and you contact them and you say, I've written a book, and they will tell you online, don't send us anything in the mail. Give us a description following what I just told you. And if we like the idea, we'll get back to you. Well, this is part of my 20 steps, is you have to describe your book so that an agent would say, this sounds really good. This is the kind of book. Because literary agents are like salespeople. They're like real estate salespeople, or insurance salespeople, or investment salespeople. They work on commission. And so therefore, they're not going to break their bones knocking on the doors and calling up their friends in the publishing industry if there's no chance of getting it published. So you've got to persuade the literary agent. If the literary agent likes your book, they will take it to market for you. And if they really like it, they'll actually invite you and they say, come with me, and we'll go and do the tour. Remember the first tour that you did? Oh, yeah. God, it was wonderful. They take you and they arrange, and this was in New York usually, to spend a day or even 2 days going around visiting publishers who may be interested in your book. And then if more than one publisher is interested, they do an auction. And the auction is where all the interested publishers phone in, and it's all organized by the literary agent, and they bid. As, well, I'll give you an advance of this, I'll give you an advance of that. Some books, usually the advance, there's a rule, is usually the only amount you'll ever get. Because most books don't cover their advance.
Right.
And so, but they bid. And so my first bid, I got $100,000 advance for Maximum Achievement. Oh my God, $100,000 from Simon & Schuster. Oh my God, they're one of the biggest, most successful publishers in the history of the world. And they outbid the other publishers. And so this is what happens. So what you do, so in my book, I took all of that stuff and I wrote out these are all the things that you do to get published. And so people, every week, at least, somebody comes back to me and said, I followed your instructions and I did everything you said to do. And I've got a book and I've got a publisher. I've got a book and an agent and a publisher. And now you promised to write a testimonial for me. And so I say, absolutely. So I always write a really good testimonial. I am really good at testimonial.
You are. There's no doubt.
I can take a nobody from nowhere and make them sound like Socrates reborn. I had a woman write to me and she said, I've got this book and it's on time management. It's on overcoming procrastination, which is my book, Eat That Frog. And that was my subject. And she had written a book on it and she was trying to get started teaching it because it's such a popular subject. I said, absolutely. I'll write you a testimonial, knock your eyes out. And I did. I helped her, even though she's selling in 100% direct competition to me. Well, I didn't hear from her for about a year. And a year later, I got a letter back from her. And she said, I didn't tell you in my letter that when I wrote to you, I had reached the end of my writing attempts. I had been working on this book for 4 years. Nobody would talk to me. I went to a literary agent and she took it around to some of her friends. Nobody would talk to her. They didn't like it, nothing. The last hope I had was to write to you, a complete stranger, and ask for your testimonial. And so I said, sure, whatever you ask, the answer is yes. So I sent her a nice testimonial and she took the testimonial. She told me she took the testimonial and she took it to the literary agent. And the literary agent says, if Brian Tracy says this about your book, I think we can get it published. So she took it to 4 publishers and one of them said, we'll take it, we'll pay in advance and we'll publish it nationwide. And she did, and the book took off and made her successful, made her a lot of money, not rich, made her a lot of money, put the book out there and literally launched her career. She said today she's giving seminars and workshops. She's writing articles. She said, your testimony transformed my life. And I've heard that many times. So therefore, if you write a book, and by the way, even if you don't buy my program, which is, I think, $495, even if you don't buy my program, if you write a book, just get the 20 steps. Go to Brian Tracy, How to Write a Book, 20 steps, follow the steps. And if you say, I followed the steps, I wrote the book, and would you write me a testimonial? The answer is yes. If you're a friend of Robert's, the answer is yes. Because we all have to help each other. We all have to help each other. Then what happened is Robert was a hero to me when I was working my way up. And then I heard that one of my sons, Michael, he had met Robert's son, Hunter, and he said, I just met this new kid that moved in across the street. And he said, his father says he knows you. I said, who is it? He says, Robert Allen. I said, Robert Allen. I read all his books, Robert Allen. So we managed to get together and meet. And we've been friends for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
We've been friends. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Hey, so first book was Match with Achievement. Then there's Eat That Frog. Now, what's the third one that they need to get?
There's 2 choices. If you're in sales, many of the top sales trainers in the world have told me, and top salespeople, that Advanced Selling Strategies is the book that breaks the bank. It's the best book ever written on selling. The best compliment I ever had was a really great salesman, one of those guys that you really like. They're smooth and they're polished and they're professional and they're friendly. He said he has 300 books on selling, which probably is why he's so successful. He said after he read Advanced Selling Strategies, he went home and threw them all away. He said, that's the only book I'll need for the rest of my life if I want to review, is Advanced Selling Strategies. But there is one, and I write so many, and they are good books. It really depends upon what you want. My 3rd best-selling book in the world, by the way, continually, and the way that we tell that a book is selling well, nationally and internationally, is how? How do we do it? How can we tell, Robert? How can we tell?
Look at my royalty statement.
Yeah, you look at the royalty statement. And the 3rd book is my book, and it's called No Excuses, The Power of Self-Discipline. And this book sells year after year, thousands and thousands in virtually every language, because as one of the Albert Hubbard, one of the greatest thinkers of the last century, said the most important skill for success, and Napoleon Hill said it, call it the master key of success. Every great success says that the most important skill is self-discipline. If you want to be successful, you have to make a decision like you're talking about, and we can talk about, if you want me to give you just a quick overview of how to succeed greatly, but then you have to have the discipline to follow through. That's really it. Everybody has dreams and hopes and wishes and goals, and everybody wants. I start off a seminar sometimes and I say, how many people here would like to double their income? And every hand, it's almost like the hands are tied to a spring. Every hand in the room goes boom, like that. I said, all right, in the time that we spend together, I'm going to give you 7 ways that are guaranteed to double your income based on my years of research and study. And they work, and they work very quickly, and they all 100% of them work 100% of the time. And then I've got a book here. And it's a book that I've done. I did a talk. I did a talk, and then I expanded the talk to, and then I expanded the talk to a half day, and then a half day to a full day. And then I wrote an audio program called Time Management for Results. It became the best-selling audio program on sales in the world. And then I wrote Eat That Frog some years later, and that is the best-selling program in history and continues to sell. It's hundreds of thousands and millions of copies. It's very simple. It's got 21 key points, and you can read them. Just 1, 2, 3. You can read the whole book in about an hour and 10 minutes, and it's a life changer. Well, but as long as you follow through. I mean, everybody wants all of these things. I said, all right, I will show you several different ways to double your income, and they all work if you will make a decision to do it and then follow through. And people write to me. You get letters. They write to me and they say it worked. Couldn't believe it. It worked.
Brian, I know one of your specialties is organization, and it's, disciplining yourself to do certain things. You've got a program on that I'd like you to just, teach us how to be more successful, more organized, more committed, more, getting more things done, just give us the top points. Teach that to us.
Well, because Robert, because I've written so many books, I always call people by their first name, by the way. And I always call my kids by their first name. And it's just sort of a thing. So I call you Robert, and everybody else calls you Bob, but
That's true.
Robert. So I'm always thinking of different, as you are. If a person has written a couple of books, they're constantly looking around and seeing, that would be a good subject for a book. Remember that? That'd be a good subject for a book. And like in your experience and my experience, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But then that's the starting point. So one of my books is Turning Points. And it goes in my mind. It goes over and over. And this is a book for each person who's listening to this, because I discuss it with my wife and I discuss it with my friends. And basically what it says is, as you go through life, you have turning points. And these are things that happened to you that were completely unexpected, and you changed. I was awake all night a few nights ago, remembering the poem by Robert Frost called The Road Less Traveled. And that poem got him the Nobel laureate, made him one of the greatest poets in history. And he talks about 2 roads diverged in a wood, and taking the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. That was the thing that changed his life, as he came to this fork. And this other fork was very popular. So obviously people walked down that path. But this other fork, nobody had seemed to go on it. So he started to walk on this other path. He said, and knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted that I would ever come back. And I shall be telling this with a sigh, ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. And every single person who is successful, I mean, I choke up when I think of that poem, because every person who's successful remembers a turning point. Sometimes you go to a party or a social function accidentally, and across the room, your eyes connect to a member of the opposite sex, and your life is never the same. And then with that person, you have children, and then you have grandchildren, and you move, and you look back and you think, what if I had not gone to that party or that function and had not met that person? For the rest of your life, you remember that point. So what are your turning points? The reason I tell you this is because each person, I was going to write a book sort of that would be, and interview people about it, but I realized it's an intensely personal story because each person has to talk about their own turning points. So I had three, the three turning points that I think of, and I call it my golden triangle. And the first turning point was when I realized that I was responsible for my own life. And I studied the subject probably 4,000 hours. I read books and articles, and I did research, and I followed every road that I could find that suggested this subject. Is that the turning point in your life is when you accept responsibility, when you say the magic words, I am responsible, I am responsible, I am responsible. Because until you make that step and you step across, and Dan, anyway, he teaches coaching. He said, what he said was that until you accept responsibility, you're a child. He said, you're a child and you are still sitting at the feet of your children and you're mad at your parents and what they didn't and did do for you and to you and everything else. And you still remain a child. And then one day you accept responsibility and you step into adulthood. And from that time on, your life is different.
Dan Sullivan.
Pardon?
Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan, that's right. Good old Dan. And Dan just has a lot of really wonderful insights, just beautiful, penetrating insight. Well, I had already been teaching that for 20 years when I when I heard him talk about it, and I talk about it as responsibility, and that what happens is that you go through life until you reach a point where you say, I am responsible. And I began teaching this in my first seminar, first day of my first seminar. The second part of the morning was I taught the importance of accepting responsibility. And then I realized if I'm responsible, the next question is responsible for what? And the what is, what do you want to do or have or be in your life? And you know, nobody knows. Most people don't know. So the second part of my golden triangle was goal setting. And so once you accepted responsibility, no excuses. I was when I was single, I was going out with this very lovely woman, and I was complaining about my father, complaining, whine, complain about my father, how what a lousy father he'd been, and raised me terribly, and all of which was true. And she was sort of looking away when I was giving my complaints and looking away and looking down. It's clear she wasn't that interested. And finally she said, Brian, let me ask you a question. And I said, sure. She said, are you happy to be alive? Probably the first person ever asked me that. And I said, but, of course I'm happy to be alive. Well, he got you here, so shut up. And I never complained about my father again for the rest of my life and for the rest of his. Never complained again. He got you here, so shut up. And then I started to realize that he did. Was he perfect? No. Was he imperfect? Did he make a lot of mistakes in life? Yes. And I began to study the subject, and I studied it and studied it and studied it. The source of all negative emotions is blaming other people for something in your life that makes you unhappy. And it starts with your parents. And you blame your parents, and you think about why your parents are to blame for this. You refuse to accept responsibility. It is so huge a subject. A man, his name escapes me, but he got a Nobel Prize for writing a book called the Cycles of Civilization, something like that. And here's what he did: is he studied all the great civilizations, 26 civilizations, going back to the first great civilization was that of Osiris of Persia, who basically started off as a nobody from nothing in a small tribe. And he built an empire that was enormous. And that was the empire that Alexander the Great defeated 600 years later. And then he built the empire and so on. And he said, there's one common theme throughout all of the empires, including the Mongol Empire, which stretched from the Sea of Japan to the Mediterranean and to the Danube, and all of India and all of China. It started off with three people. Temujin, who became known as Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan.
The perfect warrior. And I studied him all my teenage years. He was sort of my hero. And the second person was his wife, his mother, and his brother. And their tribe was attacked and wiped out. And he and his mother, oh my, isn't it great?
Just finished reading that one.
Oh, I've got a library of Genghis Khan books. I don't have that, but I will have by the time the day is over. The story is phenomenal. They said he was such a great warrior. They called him the perfect warrior, the golden warrior. And that if he had not died, when his armies had destroyed every single army up to the Danube, if he had not died and they recalled the armies back to Mongolia, he would have gone all the way to Portugal, all the way to the Atlantic. Nothing could stop him. And he went up against odds that were unbelievable. Anyway, it's a whole nother story. So what he did is this writer, I've got to look it up because I studied it in detail, is we found that there's one key quality. He said that in every situation, the tribe started off small, like Genghis Khan, 3 people, or any other tribe. They started off with 3 people, and then that's my telephone. Hold on.
That's all right. Are you guys learning anything today?
That's one of those. It's a robocall. And so I just anyway. So what he did is he studied this 26 civilizations, and they all started small, and then they were attacked, and they had to do something to survive. He said they were attacked by major dangers, almost always major other tribes, and they had to respond to this attack. And if they didn't respond to the attack, they would be wiped out. But if they did respond effectively to the attack, that would actually cause them to grow. And if they grew, they would come into conflict with an even bigger tribe. They would also attack them to try to wipe them out. And they would have to reorganize internally to respond effectively to that attack. And if they responded effectively, they would again grow, and they would again have to reorganize to be able to deal with that tribe. And so what he called it, he said, it was their ability to respond effectively to adversity year after year, and sometimes century after century, that led to the growth of huge civilizations. And what is the word? It's responsibility. Their responsibility was, and every single tribe, they say the final great civilization of the world is the American civilization. And the American civilization has had to counter and deal with huge challenges throughout its history, including today, the virus. We have to contend with it, and we shall see. I personally believe that the Western civilization, which is probably better than just the American civilization, the Western civilization will respond effectively. And why? It's because it is so entrepreneurial. Like everybody on this call is entrepreneurial, is we'll try so many different things. We'll try this and we'll try that. We'll try this and we'll try that. If it doesn't work, we try something else. If it doesn't work, we try something else. But we never effing quit. We never quit. Is we always keep trying something else until we break through. And that is part of our ethic. It's interesting. Your kids are the same. My kids are the same. Is they just never quit. I used to do a whole seminar on which I will tell you in 30 seconds, a woman that I was going out with, I was a bachelor until I was 35, but a woman I was going out with said, what do you think is your best quality? And it was kind of a conversation starter. What do you think is your best quality? I remember we were walking down the sidewalk and she asked me that, and I'd never heard the question before. By the way, it's an interesting question to ask you. What is your best quality? If your kids were to ask you, if your best friends were to ask you, what is your best quality? Now, you can only tell what quality you have is when you are facing great adversity. You can only tell your values. You can only tell your beliefs. You can only tell what is important to you. What is important to you is always illustrated in the actions that you take in conflict, in the actions that you take under adversity. The greater the adversity, I did it. I told you that I've been doing a seminar around the world on crisis management. Is how do you deal with a crisis? And the number one way to deal with a crisis, I give like a little three-point triangle. Number one is to stay calm. Stay calm. You've dealt with crises in the past. You'll deal with crises in the future. But for this one, stay calm. Because if you're calm, you think clearly and you make good decisions and you take better actions. Number two is to get the facts. Get the facts. Be knowledgeable. Today, only 5 or 10% of people are keeping current with what is actually going on. And there's a lot of things that they are saying, especially political things, that are just simply not true. There's a book was just written by one of the best teachers out of Harvard University. What is his name? It'll come to me in a second. And the title of the book is Guilty by Accusation. And today, because of the intense politics in our society, people are screaming accusations that are totally divorced from fact. There is no fact. There is no proof. And they're insisting that if the accusation is loud enough, no proof is necessary. I mean, it's the most amazing thing. So that's what I say is get the facts, is ask questions, read, become knowledgeable. I spent not about an hour a day reading about the virus and reading about the tests and the research that are being done worldwide and all the different things that different governments and different medical institutes are doing to identify different ways to keep it under control, to get it passed, to get to the, what do they call it, the herd point where there'll be enough people who've gotten over it that nobody gets it anymore. Anyway, and so number two is get the facts. How do you get facts? You ask questions. You don't get excited. You say, I'm responsible for solving or resolving this difficulty. What actually has happened? And how did it happen? And when did it happen? And why did it happen? And where did it happen? And what is going on now? And the more you stay calm and ask questions, the more you ask questions, the more you stay calm, the more you think well, the more more helpful you are. Nothing worse than a person who panics in a crisis. I mean, they're completely useless. But a person who stays calm, every single one of the great leaders was a person who experienced crisis after crisis, but they thought better. It was amazing. I mean, when you look at, they would spend hours and hours and hours planning a battle, planning a counterattack, planning a move. They would spend hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. I worked with General Norman Schwarzkopf on the stage speaking, and you probably had a chance to speak with him on the stage. Good guy, great guy behind the curtains. I mean, he just said so many great things. Here's what Schwarzkopf said. He was asked, he said, what is the key to success? This is a time when he was one of the most popular people in the world, and he had won the Gulf War, and brilliantly. And what's the key to success? He said, well, he learned it from his boss when he was working at the Kremlin. And he asked his boss was leaving and going out to the Far East for 6 months, and put him in charge of the entire army for which they were responsible. And he said, well, I'm on my way. He came in with his briefcase and his coat over his arm. He said, well, I'm on my way. I'll be back in 6 months. He said, you're in charge. And he said, oh, thank you very much. I mean, stood up and he tells this story really well. He tells, and the general left, and headed for the elevator. He said, wait a minute. And he followed him down the hallway to the elevator. And he said, but how, what do I do? What's my next step? He said, when placed in command, take charge. That's all you need to know. I'm putting you in command, take charge. And he said, great, wonderful. And he turned back and went back to his office. And he said, oh, shit. And he went back to the elevator, got on the elevator. The general had already gone down. The general was walking out of the building toward a limousine that was waiting to take him to the airport. And he rushed after him. He said, okay, you said number one rule, follow rule number one, take charge. Well, what do I do? I mean, how do I make decisions? He said, always do the right thing. So it's all you need to remember. Take charge, do the right thing. And he got into the car and drove off to the airport. And that was the beginning of Schwarzkopf's great career, one of the great careers of the 20th century. So it's a little thing, I always think about that, is when placed in command, and you are now in command, everybody, once you become an adult, once you accept responsibility, you're an adult. Take command, take charge. Don't blame other people. And number two, just do the right thing.
So
And the third,
level two,
number two is set goals. You need clear, specific, written goals. And by the way, anybody who's on this program, come to my website. It's either briantracy.com or branditize.com. And we offer you a complete program on how to set and achieve goals completely free. I really believe so passionately in the importance of goals. I'm the best-selling author in the world on goal setting, and have been year after year after year. So if you are not a goal setter, get this book. You'll never be the same. These people who become billionaires, the first book they read is Maximum Achievement. The second book they read is Goals. And then, so set goals, make a written plan, and I'll show you how to do it, for what you want to accomplish, where you want to be, what you want to do, organize it, have schedules and everything else, and work the plan every day. Just work the plan. Just set a plan and work the plan. And number three is dedicate yourself to continuous learning. Dedicate yourself to continuous learning. I read 3 hours a day. And sometimes when I'm traveling long distances, which I'm not doing now, I'll read 3, 5, 8 hours. I take notes. I do not know if my radio works in my car, because the only thing I've ever done is listen to audios. And today, the stuff that you can get, oh my God, the stuff that you can get and download from Audible is absolutely wonderful. You can listen to the very best material in the world. You can stop it and start it. And also you can read. It's audio books. You can read it. We never had this before. So you can become one of the smartest and best educated, most competent people in the world today just by turning, you say, driving time into learning time. Take walking time and turn it into learning time. So those are my three. If you can only do three things in life: one, accept responsibility, step over the line, and never blame anybody else for anything for the rest of your life. Always say those magic words, I'm responsible. Number two is set clear, specific, written goals, properly organized. And I teach a 12-step process in this free material that we give you. And number three is continuous learning. Never stop learning. I remember when I first came across continuous learning, I felt I had died and gone to heaven. My life was never the same. I read countless novels, history and so on. And then I read a book on sales when I started off in selling. And I was astonished at what you could learn to improve your life by reading stuff on the subject. And so I did. And I never stopped reading again. I was just like a fanatic on reading. So do the same things. Read, go to courses. Be sure that you visit Bob's program every single time he gives an offer. You know how much they pay me to share these ideas? A lot. It's got lots of zeros behind it. And I have so many opportunities to share these programs. They call me from all over the world, and they offer me the amounts that they would offer me for live seminars. And Bob and I have spoken to thousands of people, and they pay us a lot, lots of zeros. And they call me up and they say, would I come on like this and speak to their people, talk to their people, answer questions to their people? So I do seminars that are set up in studios that are actually have like a movie studio. And there will be hundreds. I did one course for 2,000 people recently. And it's basically a movie theater. And everybody's in there, and then they just collect questions and answers, and they sort them out, and they give you the questions, and so on. So, so I'm very happy to be able to give these questions to you guys at no charge.
You know, Brian, we'll give us some time to ask you questions in a minute. One of your programs called Maximum Productivity. And what's in that program that's so special, Brian?
The most, if you want to be rich, you find out what rich people do. In fact, I have got so many products and manuscripts and everything, but it's simply this. The most important thing you do is to determine the most important thing you can do. Is of all the things you can do, what is the most valuable single use of your time? And this is one of the greatest questions you ask. What is the most valuable use of my time right now, this minute? And then what you do is you write it down in your time management plan, and then you discipline yourself to begin work on that task, and then to only do that task until it is 100% complete. What I've just given you has actually made me rich, because I've written in my book, Maximum Achievement, and many other books and articles and courses. Make a list of everything that you have to do in the coming day, best of all the night before. Look at the list and say, if I could only complete one thing on this list, which one activity would have the greatest positive impact on my life? Simple as that. Put a circle around that. And then you go through and you organize the list. And I've learned a lot of stuff. One of the things I learned from Bob, which I really liked, is do the worst first. And I remember reading that in one of your materials. And I teach it all the time. Do the worst first. And what is the worst? The worst is the biggest, ugliest task of all, the one that you are most likely to procrastinate on. It's the one that requires the most discipline, and discipline and character have an equal sign between them. Men and women with discipline are men and women with great character. On a seminar weekend, I visited a publishing house in northern New York State, Aurora, and it was owned by a man who died many years ago, named, his name will come to me because I've got half of his books. I've got 20 or 30 of his books. He was Elbert Hubbard. Elbert Hubbard, in the early part of the century, in the last part of the 1900s, was the most popular and most prolific author in America. He was unbelievable. He wrote so many books that sold so many thousands of copies that he actually had to build his own publishing company to publish and distribute the books. And he was once asked, what is the most important quality for success? And he said, the most important requirement for success is self-discipline. And he said, and the very best definition of self-discipline is to make yourself do what you should do, when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not. He said, it's easy to do something if you feel like it, if it's convenient, if it's comfortable, if you rest, you had a nice cup of coffee, you read the newspaper. It's easy to do things that you enjoy. But to do something, to force yourself to do something that you know you should do because it's so important, is the true mark of a superior person. It's really the mark of superiority, and it is the key to great success. Now, here's one of the most important things. It's one of the reasons the publishing house picked up my book and about 20 others called Eat That Frog. It was something that I had written in my materials that really gave a jolt to the publisher, one of the best guys I ever met. He thought about that. I said, I've never thought about that before. And it's this, is that all of life, all of success in life is the result of task completion. Not working at tasks, but completing tasks. It's starting and working at the task and finishing it 100%. And I learned this from Alexander Solzhenitsyn decades ago, when he talked about that everything in life comes from finishing things, not working at things. He said the world is full of people who work on tasks and they're not complete, like books that are never completed, scripts that are never completed, businesses that are never completed because the person comes up with an excuse or a reason. We call this, you know, you heard the funny one-liner is most people suffer from excusitis, which is an inflammation of the excuse-making gland. And so they're always thinking about excuses or reasons why not to complete. All of life is task completion, whatever it is. It's finishing the course, it's finishing the book, it's finishing the exam, it's finishing whatever it is, task completion. And here's what happens. When you complete a task, it gives you a burst of elation. It raises your self-esteem and your self-concept. It makes you like, even love and respect yourself more. You feel happy. And not only that, it releases endorphins in your brain, which increase your creativity and your feelings of well-being and your intelligence. And it motivates you. You want to repeat that wonderful feeling of completion. Like it's, and I say to my audience, I say, if somebody runs in a race and comes in first, what do they call them? And everybody comes up with the answer. They call him the winner, right? I say, well, whenever you start and complete a task, you get the same feeling. You feel like a winner. You feel good about yourself. And one of the great psychologists, Alfred Adler, he called this a positive addiction. He said you can get yourself positively addicted to doing certain things because you do things that give you a feeling of elation. One of the reasons why people become addicted to negative things is because of the feeling of release or happiness or energy that they get. They get addictions, and then once you get an addiction, you become addicted to doing things that give you these feelings. However, there's a positive addiction, and the positive addiction is where you systematically, like sitting up and programming your mind, you program yourself, and you discipline yourself to develop an addiction to things that make you feel like a winner. And the most wonderful thing of all, and that's why Eat That Frog is so important. That's why doing the worst first, Robert, is so important, is because it gives you a feeling of release and elation and happiness, and you want to do it again, and you're driven. How many times have you forced yourself to sit up half the night to finish the book? You're reading a book and you like the book and you're tired and it's midnight, but by gum, there's something in you that drives you to finish the darn book, to complete the task. Can you ever think of mowing half a lawn? I mean, just think about, I just thought about that this second. Imagine you're out there with your lawnmower and stopping after having mowed half the lawn. Just to sit, a thing like, or cleaning up half the dishes in your kitchen, or putting away half the newspaper. I mean, you and I are programmed at a very deep level to complete things. But therefore, but then the only question is, what is the most important thing to complete? What is the thing that's going to make the biggest difference in your life if you start it and stay with it, have the discipline to stay with it, and then complete it? And then what happens is, now it may make you a success, you may make a lot of money, you may not know, but make a decision. I'm going to make 10 sales calls. I learned this from one of my closest friends, Alan Peace. You remember Alan? Yeah, Alan said when he started off selling insurance, he would give himself a reward every time he made a call. And he would basically set up a cup of hot tea and cookies, and he'd give himself a sip of tea or a bite of cookie when he had made a call. And whereas all the others were talking and making excuses, wasting time and everything else, he would sit down, get himself ready, and he'd begin a call. And he would not stop until he had made 10 calls. He would not stop until he'd spoken to 3 people. He would not stop. He disciplined himself until basically he was programmed to be a success machine. And after that, and you and I know Alan is a wonderful guy. He's just one of the happiest, most positive, most complete guys. He's just a neat guy. And he tells us that's because of that, because he disciplined himself to start to complete his most important tasks every day. So that's why,
Brian, we are just drinking from the fire hose of your wisdom and your experience. We could listen for hours, frankly, Brian. But I try to keep these calls so that they're reasonable in length. The program that you can look in the chat there, Brian's program called Maximum Productivity. You want to know the model of maximum productivity? You just heard him. He not only writes about it and teaches about it, but he lives it. And I've seen it with my own eyes for decades. Brian, I'm so honored that you were able to share some of your time here with us, even though you just came from the doctor. Our prayers go out for you for your operation on Monday. I hope it's on your ticker, huh? What are they going to do?
Well, for most of my life, I've been extraordinarily healthy. And then I had a bit of a problem. I had a surgery, and somehow a little bit of bacteria got into a replaced hip. Now this happens occasionally, but when you read the newspapers, for the rest of the time you read newspapers, notice how many people went into the hospital for something and died of an infection.
Yeah.
And I had no idea about this, but what happened is I got an infection, and I went from just being like a machine. I just sort of lost my energy and my ability to think clearly. And I finally went to the doctors, and they said, something's wrong here. They put me in the hands of an infection specialist. And he said, well, what we're going to have to do is give you antibiotics every day for 6 weeks. And it turned into 7 months. And I had to quit all my speaking and quit all my traveling and quit everything, because I had to go to the clinic every day for 7 months. And then they could operate. I couldn't operate before that and replace the infected hips. And then everything was getting better and better and better. And 2 months ago, I went to my doctor, and he said, well, let's take a test, check up and so on. And he said, oh my God, the infection has gone from one hip across to the other hip. And it's the same hip. It almost killed me. And infections kill you. I mean, the more people die from infections than die from what they go into the hospital for. And so now I'm going through this massive series of tests to kill the infection so that they can operate again and or fix me up without an infected hip. So that's why I'm doing all these things. Right now, I'm back on top mentally, but I can't walk very much, and I can't swim very much, and I can't run at all. So everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. I had cancer. I'll stop talking right now. I had cancer, and I got over it. And I did a movie called My Fight with Cancer, and it's on, what is that?
YouTube?
YouTube. It's on YouTube, and it's been watched by people all over the world. And there's one part of it that people tell me over and over again was life-changing for them. And so I just throw this out, by the way, and it is trust your doctors. Do your homework and make sure that you've got a good doctor with a good reputation. And I have reached out and gotten excellent doctors that other doctors say are great doctors. And then trust your doctors. And I would say that for the rest of your life. If you've got an ache or a pain of any kind, women are very smart, by the way. Women, if they get an ache or a pain, they go straight to a doctor. And when they get together, they talk about doctors and who's a good doctor and who's not a good doctor and who they like more and who they like less. Men put it off. Men have a tendency to put it off and think, well, take a couple of painkillers.
While you're finishing up, Brian, people are going to be putting some questions in the chat for you. If you've got a burning question that you'd like to ask one of the wisest men you'll ever be in contact with, he's here, right here. So any question that you'd like to ask Brian, he'll hang around for another couple of minutes. Let's pick 3 great questions so that he can share his wisdom with you. You have a question you'd like to ask Brian? Let it rip in the chat. Here we go. All right. Yes. Well, they're giving you lots of prayers, Brian. They're saying our prayers for you. Yeah. Well, what one change should you do to give away a bad or a lazy habit? Says Sachin. What change should you do to give away a bad or a lazy habit?
what you do is you write down how you would behave if you had the opposite of that. Like, let's say a lazy habit is getting up too late or eating too much and so on. So what would you do to counteract that, to program yourself into a new habit? And the answer is then you do that all the time, is you discipline yourself to do the opposite of the lazy habit. And it takes, they say 21 days to develop a new habit. Every single day, you have an opportunity to engage in the old habit, engage in the new habit. Write it down on a card and write down something like, I always do this in this type of situation. I always awake. By the way, here's an interesting example. In the studies of millionaires and billionaires, and I've just written a book on it, and how you can practice them and become rich, millionaires and billionaires get up before 6 a.m. in the morning. And poor people don't. Poor people get up at the last possible minute. They drag around, they drink coffee, they read the paper, they watch TV, they go off to work at the last possible minute. They take as much time off. The average person works less than 50% of the time. But wealthy people, Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, he was asked, what's your secret to success? And he said, it's simple. He said, I just say no to everything that is not my 2 or 3 most important tasks at that moment. I just say no. I teach that, by the way. It's one of the 7 ways to double your productivity, performance, and income. And he just says no. So what you do is you make a decision. It's when you are tempted to engage in this behavior, you just say no. No, I'm not going to do it. I am going to do the opposite. I'm going to discipline myself to do the opposite and only the opposite. And in a very short period of time, because of this feeling of elation that you get from completing a positive task, you actually program yourself psychologically. You program yourself into doing that good thing automatically. And you'll feel uncomfortable doing the bad thing. You'll feel happy when you do the good thing, the opposite of your bad habit.
Clyde asks, how do you make a discipline to start reading?
Well, the easiest way, and I probably learned this from you many years ago, but the easiest way is to start small. And whatever it is that you're going to do, you want to develop success in real estate, you want to develop success in saving, in exercise, in anything, start small. And give yourself one small piece of task, and then do that for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. Do it every day, and force yourself to do it. Don't even allow yourself to go to bed. Don't allow yourself to have lunch. Don't allow yourself, as Alan would tell us, he wouldn't have his first cup of tea unless he had called and spoken to his first prospect for the day. So give yourself a task, and then give yourself a reward, and do that, and then do it more often. And pretty soon, you can hardly wait to do the good things, and to develop and become the kind of person that you want to be.
Yeah, Brian. And final question is, how do you stop procrastination?
Well, again, it's little things. And my book, Eat That Frog, it came from a book or an article that was written by Mark Twain. And by the way, I saw a complete life story of Mark Twain on Netflix, and it was fascinating. He was basically the most popular speaker and author, motivator in America, if not the world, for years and years. He just started with nothing. But anyway, he wrote a little one-liner in about 1895. And I've had some people have written and said he never did this, he never said that. And some people said he did, but it's simply this. He said, if the first thing you do when you get up in the morning is you eat a live frog, then you'll have the satisfaction of going through the day knowing that's probably the worst thing that will ever happen to you. And he said, and there are 2 corollaries to the rule. Number 1, if you have 2 frogs to eat the ugliest one first. Which is and your frog is your biggest and ugliest and task, and the one you're most likely to procrastinate on. Do that one first. And the second one said that if you have a frog to eat in the first place, eat it immediately. Don't sit and look at it for too long, because it's real easy to procrastinate if you sit and think about the task. Just launch into it. Throw yourself into it. It was interesting. I've studied the life of Napoleon, probably one of the top 3 generals in history. And he developed a strategy, a battle strategy that made him this. Oh wow! Is that one? Is that who's that by? Shauna?
That's by Andrew Roberts.
Andrew
Well,
Roberts?
that's a good book.
Oh my! He's the one who he's
Wow.
a couple of
Thick
years.
book. It's great.
He also wrote. He wrote the special book on Waterloo, which is Andrew Roberts. Great book. Reading about leaders, by the way, has a sort of a programming effect, is they found that the most successful people in the world have read and studied the biographies of successful and rich people. And reading them causes their qualities and behaviors kind of to soak into you.
Yep.
And you automatically act like them. You automatically behave the way these people behave. But anyway, Napoleon had developed a simple battle strategy and he used many different strategies. And when he didn't use it, he lost. But the battle strategy was he would do exhaustive preparation for the battle and prepare about against everything that would be likely to happen that might cause him to lose the battle. And he had thought it through well in advance. And then when he attacked like a son of a gun. He would take his army and the army would move in and then he would launch the attack and the army would go for his army, the French army, would go for the heart of the rival army with cannons smashing into the army and the armed men with bayonets. And they would run so fast, fighting and shouting, screaming, shooting, so fast that the other army, seeing these tens of thousands of French soldiers shouting, screaming, running at them, it could tear them to pieces. They'd drop everything and run, and then the cavalry would come in and just smash it. It's just the most amazing thing. One great strategy, but the strategy was, if you're going to do it, throw your whole army into the attack. In your own personal life, throw your whole heart into what you do and stay at it until it's done. Complete everything. Remember, everything, all success in life, personal, self-esteem, self-regard, financial success, is to start and complete your most important tasks. Start and complete. Everything is task completion. Get nothing for working on a task. You know, how's your script going? You know, almost done. No, you get nothing. You not even get a read for working on something. You only get a read it for completion.
Everybody give a wonderful hand for one of the smartest men I know, Brian. We love you, and our prayers are going out for you that infection is eliminated. You've got so much to give. The world still needs to hear from Brian. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for being here. You know, Robert, I've told you before, I'll tell you again, I love you, my man. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and it's a pleasure to be with you guys as well. And I wish you great success. You will get through this. They say the four most important words ever put together in the English language are the words, "This too shall pass."
Yeah.
This too, and so this will pass. And so your job and my job, I am almost as busy now as I was when I was working full time and traveling. Like I'm spending time with you. I do this with companies all over the world, only I charge them. You know, when Robert asked me if I would come on and speak to his friends and share some of these ideas, I said, sure, I'd be happy to do it. I mean, that's my job. And he said, well, you must understand. He said, I can't pay you anything. This is a sort of a gratuity. And I said, well, oh, okay, I'll still do it. I still do it because I love you and I want to do it. And so I just want you to know that I've come here today to be good for nothing.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh my
you,
God,
Brian.
that was amazing.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Robert.
Brian.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Brian.
Brian.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Robert.
Robert. Thank you.
God bless you.
Oh, excellent.
Thank
Love you.
you.